Okay, now it's recording.
All right, so I work for a law firm that I own. I'm actually a solo practitioner. I
Mm-hmm.
do take on interns from time to time, but as of now, I'm a solo practitioner. My law firm's called Esparza Rivero Law. I was born and raised in Tampa, Florida. My father's a Cuban immigrant who's also black, and my mother's a Spanish immigrant who's a white woman. So it's kind of a unique situation. I'm biracial, but also
Mm-hmm.
Latino. That's a big part of who I am and my identity. So I always like to throw that in there. Uh, and a lot of people in Ohio aren't quite exposed to that kind of, you know, biracial Latino mix.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
example, for me, my mom, she's from Mexico, and my dad's parents, they all came all the way from Iran.
Oh,
So it's an
wow. What a
interesting
great
little
mix.
mix too. Yeah.
My future children, God willing, will be Arabic and Latino because my wife's Lebanese.
Oh wow.
So similar. I know not quite Arabic, but similar, similar
Yeah.
culture. So yeah,
And
that's
let's hope
awesome.
you start them young with being bilingual. Those
Yes,
kids
I
will pick
hope
up
so.
fast.
I hope so.
That's awesome. Do you want to continue on for Rita, or do you want me to go? Or
Oh, you can go ahead.
okay, well, I just kind of wanted to know particularly. I had watched your videos that Dr. Via posted about your encounter with the police, and I was wondering if you could kind of just talk a little bit more about that. And there was like a panel in 2015 that you spoke on, and I'd watched that. And I'm doing a feature on like police brutality, and I was just wondering if you could just give more information on that, and yeah, just to start us off.
Sure, sure. So, yeah, that situation was a bit life changing for me. Not because I was, I don't like to identify myself as a victim of anything, but
Mm-hmm.
not because I experienced police brutality, but because at the point in my life where I was when I experienced it, right? So, growing up, I grew up in a very impoverished neighborhood, very dangerous neighborhood, just, full of drugs and violence. Most of my family members have been to prison. Uh, so being violent encounters with the police were kind of weekly thing. Uh, but once I went to John Carroll and I graduated and I got my first job and I saw myself as a successful young professional, and then I go somewhere and I'm targeted in that way. That was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, just because of where I was in my life. I had went against the grain, and I said this in that video. I went against the grain for so long. It's so exhausting to succeed growing up the way we grew up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every day you wake up to a fork in the road. Every single day, the average kid, for example, hopefully my children, will get a fork in the road once a month. You know, they're 13 and the kid's going to ask them to smoke some marijuana and they're going to have to make a decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Growing up the way I grew up, every single day you make a decision. Okay, I could go to school or I could go sell dope on the corner and make $1,000. Or every day you wake up, I could jump in the car with these guys and do this, or I can go to school, every single day. So every day you make that right decision, which is the harder decision, just to be in the end still treated like you didn't make those decisions or you didn't do the right thing. So that was a situation. It struck a chord with me just because I had always experienced the police brutality, but the point in my life, it was just so it was so unfair in my opinion, that I had to experience that. And sometimes growing up, my interactions with police that were negative were kind of my fault sometimes, just because I was a young knucklehead, being, a lot of young kids were smart asses, things like that. But in this situation, I was completely targeted for no reason, which was, I think, a sign from a higher power for me. I kind of believe in that stuff. Hey man, there's a bigger purpose here of why this is happening, and you need to go do something about it. So, yeah, if there's any specific things you want to know about that situation, I'm happy to elaborate. But it's just such a long one. I don't want to go on and on about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Just a follow-up question. In that moment, you said like you thought that maybe your life was going to be taken. Looking back on that, do you feel like that still could have been a possibility even though it didn't happen, or?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I 100% believe to this day that my life, I could have ended up, one of these long list of names of people who have been killed by police, without a doubt in my mind. I sensed it. The fear that I sensed in that moment was indescribable. I can't even put it into words. And I've been in some very, very dangerous and very scary situations in my lifetime. Um, but that one was one where I thought it was my last day for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Afraid if you want to go next.
So as for me, my future story, as you might have heard from the email, is immigration. And what I would like to know, I looked through your website previously, and I know that one of your things they work on is family immigration. Like, can you elaborate more on that? Like, how how are those cases? Like, how are your clients affected during this current social time, especially as we're coming down to days to this election?
Okay, so the family immigration is basically family members who are in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
that want to file and bring foreign family members over.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of cut out a little bit on me. Your mic's a little bit muffled, but I think you were asking what is it like now trying to bring family members over with the whole climate of the
Yeah.
immigration. And okay, so it's very difficult. Okay, it really depends on which country you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
The visa line, when you're in for a visa, the line that you're in depends on the country that you're from. For example, the big four, what we call in immigration law, are China, Mexico, Philippines, and India. Those four countries have a ton of people trying to come from those countries. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, because they're some of the most, India and China are two of the most populated countries on the planet. And Mexico, because it's a bordering country, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
so difficult to get here. And Philippines as well. Those have a long line. So it's very difficult to bring people over. With the climate the way it is immigration law. It kind of depends on which officer receives your case,
Okay.
right? So, for example, if I file a petition for a young man who's here and he's filing for his mother in, let's say, Spain, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that officer who gets your case, um, he could be really picky with how you file that filing, which is there's a lot of technical terms like an I-130 and things like that, the forms.
Mm-hmm.
But whichever officer gets your case, that officer could be a big anti-immigration guy and not agree with more people coming in. So he can nitpick every single thing on that application. I mean, certain applications, you're not even allowed to leave a space blank. If you don't put the letters N/A, then they could reject it, send it back. Most officers don't do that. So it's very touchy. Um, in terms of the climate now, Trump didn't really affect family immigration that much.
Mm-hmm.
But what he did do was he gave the people who are a little bit radical, who do work in immigration, he gave them that kind of courage to step out of bounds on certain things, right? So
Yeah.
it's not so much Trump putting orders in, it's more the courage and his presence that give people, that kind of that bravery to say, okay, I'm gonna reject this for no reason, or this is the wrong form. I mean, I've gotten filings back where they said something was wrong, and I go back and read through the rules for 2 hours and nothing is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how the climate is with that. But with family immigration, it really depends on the country. I've still been successful with people here. With the climate, I've been very successful in getting family here. Now, removal protection, like asylum and
Mm-hmm.
people who are caught at the southern border there, that's a whole different story. And if I'm not giving you enough or not exactly what you want, you let me know. I was in your shoes too, so I
That's
did this
okay. I
class.
was also kind of like, if you like, I wanted to ask you about a few days ago, the Supreme Court was going to plan to take up some cases about the funding for the border law and as well as what's called the stay in Mexico policy, from what I can tell. And And I want to know like your input on that. Like, were there any cases where it was much more difficult because some of the family members were unable or were forced to stay in Mexico or things like that?
Yeah, so the Custom and Border Protection
Mm-hmm.
is not really enforced. They have not, in my experience. Now, I don't know. There are so many crossing the border every day and coming to and turn themselves into CBP,
Mm-hmm.
which is Customs and Border Protection. In my experience, they have let them still come in. A mom shows up with her little kids and says, "Hey, I have a cousin who lives in Ohio." They are letting them through, and they're not. I think it's the bad publicity. It started getting out that these people were in
Yeah.
cages and dying of the flu and things like that. That bad publicity really, Customs and Border Patrol really let those people come through. Now, 4 years ago, in like 2017, when Trump first came in,
Mm-hmm.
that was not the case. People were not even being admitted. But as far as the border wall to me, anyone who knows immigration law knows that the border wall means nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it means nothing is factually, most human trafficking and drug trafficking, the border wall does not do anything to prevent that, because sophisticated drug traffickers and sophisticated human traffickers run close to $1 billion industry, right? So they have very sophisticated ways to get across the border, and something as primitive as a wall does nothing to deter them. Drug traffickers and human traffickers are not backpacking drugs across the border on foot.
Mm-hmm.
The most of and the research is out there, most of drug trafficking comes through the port of entry. Port of entry is cars coming through, you're talking to the CBP agent coming, these are US citizens who are involved in this, Mexican citizens who have a border crossing card. The wall is kind of just it was a way to ignite people who don't know what immigration looks like. It ignites, it lights the fire for them. Oh, a big wall, that's awesome. And it doesn't do anything. What would deter illegal immigration is creating more pathways, especially for people in the southern border area, Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, those 4 countries, you got to create more legal pathways to get here. You have to, in Mexico, for example, right now, in order to get here, you have to basically do the family immigration.
Mm-hmm.
And the waiting list for family immigration is 25 years. So not only do you have to be lucky enough to have a family member here, number 2, that family member has to make enough money to file for you, because they don't make a certain amount of money, then you're a public charge and you won't be let in. They won't let you come here and just, oh, let me file for my cousin, but he's going to come here and be on food stamps. They don't let you do that. So you got to be wealthy enough to file for someone. Then you have to wait 25 years just to get a turn in line.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not even get approved at that point. So if that's the only way, then of course these people are going to run across the border. You got to create a lot more pathways to come here legally for a time, make some money, pay a fee, pay some taxes, so the U.S. gets their cut and you go back to your country. And then there's no reason to come here illegally, because people come here to work to help their family. So create options for that.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants, I'm for one, not an advocate for open borders. I don't think most rational people are. It's just, that's kind of like how, that's how the left and the right battle each other. Oh, open, close. It's not, most people want borders, but they want just more ways for these people to come here legally, work here, go back, come back. Like, just, why does it have to be so cut and dry like that? So that's kind of the dynamic there.
Thank you very much for answering.
I'm glad you guys recorded this. It's a lot of information. So.
Yeah, good thing I remember before. Otherwise, everything would have been there.
My next question is, concerning that situation that you encountered, why do you think you were targeted?
So I 100% believe I was targeted because of the way I look, right? So a lot of people are a bit in denial. I know I have an ambiguous look racially. A lot when I got to Ohio, a lot of people, can't tell what I am, right? But the way I was dressed that night, and you saw the video, I dressed in that video the way I was dressed that night, right?
Yes.
So I have a very, I don't know, urban style of dress. You know, that's the way I love hip hop. I love the rap culture. I grew up in that culture. That is how I dress, right? I wear, when I go out, I wear Jordans. I mean, I'm getting a little old for that now, in my opinion, but when I go out, I wear Jordans. I wear like, I wear like Nipsey Hussle has his marathon clothing line that says Crenshaw. I wear those shirts. Like that's what I like, and it's what I relate to. So definitely believe it is the way I look. I think it was also because I was so, even though I looked that way, I was dealing with the situation so professionally, and I was about to get out of it. I had diffused the entire situation and kind of taking control of the situation. I kind of have that unique ability to control, to like just get everyone to calm down. So I was just like, hey, everyone, we're not here to cause trouble. Trust me, this is what I do, blah, blah, blah. I'm not here to cause. So everyone calm down. And I think that office, now knowing more about that officer after the fact, I actually know, was that you got somewhere?
That was me.
Oh, okay. I thought my carbon monoxide detector was going, I'm about to take off. So I think knowing that officer more than I know about him now, he was mad that he didn't have control of that situation. And he just grabbed me. And the first thing he said was, do you think you're important? And that, so that was like, he was just trying to flex his, he was on a power trip for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. Trying to, in his mind, I think put me in my place.
Wow. Thank you.
No problem.
Go ahead, Farida, if you have
a question. So I was looking through my notes, and also since as the elections are coming up and whoever becomes the president, how would you do you believe that the situation with the immigration would be changed under the new administration?
For immigration reasons, I think if Biden were to take over, it would be very beneficial for immigration. Very, very beneficial. Actually, immigration is one of the few areas that the president actually has almost sole control over. So, Biden would very, very much benefit immigrants. I think the more pathways to citizenship is something that's in his plan, is something that he would advocate for. The DACA, the Dreamers, that is something that is I have a couple clients who are more American than me. I'm fluent in Spanish and they're not, that are Dreamers and they have DACA, and they will be sent back if DACA is revoked. So that's a huge issue for this election. And just, I do my best to follow both sides of the coin in terms of politics. So I always follow a lot of right-wing media, a lot of left-wing media, a lot of independent media, just so I can get a taste of everything and kind of get an idea. And I always see when the Supreme Court ruled to keep DACA recently, what you saw in right-wing media was Supreme Court rules to keep 700,000 illegal immigrants here. And then what you saw on the left-wing media is, Supreme Court rules to keep these, people who came in as children here because they were brought as no fault of their own, right? So I think it's important that people know what DACA is. DACA are kids who came here under the age of 16, brought by their parents before a certain date. There's a lot of qualifications to meet DACA, and most of my DACA clients were infants. They have no memory of their home country. They don't speak the language of their home country. So if they would be sent back, it would be like either one of us three being sent back to, I don't know, where our great grandparents are from. We would be completely lost. We would not know, So I think if people were to, I think if people really educate themselves, and if they're sitting in the middle, like, who do I vote for? I hate them both. I don't like either one of them. Then I think if you look at a lot of these immigration issues, like the kids that are going to be sent back to foreign countries, well, some of them are adults now, some of them in their 20s, 30s, right?
Mhm.
But these people who are going to be sent back, I mean, that might help tip the scale for some of these people, because I can't imagine right now being ripped out of this country and sent to another one, with just a backpack. I mean, a couple suitcases with everything. I know DACA people who are business owners, multimillionaires. People, they pay taxes here. They're more productive than some of the people who were born here. So it's wild to me that everyone can't be on board when it comes to the fact of children.
Mhm.
These are kids, and 700,000 of them just sitting in limbo. And it's a lot of anxiety for these people, and they're American. They're just as American as any one of us. So, yeah, immigration, I think, will, if Trump gets elected, is very, very bad for immigrants in this country, who are here, especially from those Latin American countries,
Mhm.
and from Middle Eastern Muslim countries. So yeah, I think Biden would be, if you care about immigrants and you really want to see some productive immigration and not just, hey, let's shut the door
Mhm.
and not let anyone in. I think you definitely got to go Biden, in that respect.
Mhm. Thank
So do you think that with the events of this past year, George Floyd and the Breonna Taylor case, with I believe the ruling just came out today, with the third-degree murder charge was dropped against Chauvin, but they kept all the other charges against him and the three others. Do you think that these individuals were shown justice?
Yeah. So this is tough for me, right? Because I'm a defense attorney.
Yes.
So I would be defended. Like, if those cops called me, I would have to make a decision on whether or not I would want to defend them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is tough to answer, because obviously my one side of me says, yes, I want him thrown in jail. The other side said, I don't know if throwing people in cages, in prison, in jail is the right solution. That's kind of what my foundation as defense attorney is. There's rarely a situation where I think someone should be thrown in a prison. Now, so no, I don't think they were shown justice. If I have to answer that question, no, right? Because I don't think these officers said, "Hey, here's George Floyd. He's a black guy. Let me go after him." Right? I don't think that's in anyone's conscious thought as a police officer. But what I do think is there is a built-in subconscious reaction when an officer sees a large black person or even a black woman, or anyone of color. More so black. I don't like to use people of color and black interchangeably, because it's very two different things. Me looking the way I do get away with a lot more than a black person gets away with. That's the reality, in my opinion, right? But like I said, I don't think it's a conscious racist cop decision. I think there is a subconscious that when these officers see a black guy, they feel more threatened subconsciously. They're not going through their mind, okay, black guy, he's dangerous. I got to arrest him. I got to have my gun out. I think it's just subconscious. And I think you eliminate that with training and obviously money, because you have to put these people in these neighborhoods to get acquainted with people that they don't understand. But no, I don't think they're shown justice. If I don't know of the decision you're talking about, I didn't see that today. I've been doing housework most of the day, so I haven't opened my phone too much. But no, I don't think they're shown justice. It took way too long to arrest these officers. Um, you know, should these officers go to prison for a long time? I don't think so either. But I do think they should suffer some consequences. They definitely shouldn't allow to be officers again. That's just a side effect of all this. But I definitely think they should be charged with something and have to go through the steps that, for a lot of minorities in this country have had to go through for much lesser crimes. You know what I mean? So no, I don't think these individuals are shown justice, and they rarely are, just because of the climate of the culture of law enforcement in this country.
Thank you.
So I just want to ask kind of a silly question about. You talked about you mentioned the big four, which is China, Mexico, Mexico, the Philippines, and India. Is there any huge difference between trying to help with immigrants from China, the Philippines, and India, or are any of the difficulties or cases similar?
Yeah, so different countries do present different difficulties. Certain countries tend to have more fraudulent, like marriages. Uh, certain people from certain countries, because in the 50s, their uncle married some American lady and they got through. They think that the rumor kind of spreads, right? Um, yeah, so when an immigration officer gets that filing, the one that pops, I know you didn't mention this country, but the one that pops up in my head is Western Africa, Nigeria, Ghana. Whenever an officer gets a Nigerian or Ghana case, I've always seen them examine that filing if it's a marriage case with a lot more scrutiny, because historically, statistically, there have been a lot more marriage fraud cases discovered within that demographic or within that country or within that area, no, Western Africa. So I always prepare those cases extra carefully. If I put in extra pictures of the wedding, I put in extra letters from family members that this is a legitimate relationship. I put extra, copies of joint bank accounts, copies of joint leases, copies of, just the stuff to show that the marriage is legitimate. But yeah, each country definitely has their unique battle. India, I've seen a lot of officers ask for more proof that the documents that countries from India are people from India are submitting, that they're not fraudulent documents. Chinese cases, I haven't dealt with too many Chinese cases, to be honest with you, so I don't know. But yeah, every country, regardless of those big four, every country presents their little battle, and those immigration officers are looking for certain things on those filings. And did I answer your question right?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead, Frida.
No, you go ahead. I was going to ask you.
Okay. Sorry, something's going on over here. So just kind of a basic question, but I want to expand on it. Do you think racism is a systematic problem in this country?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Without question. Me being a legal, I went to law school. I'm a lawyer. I've examined the law historically. And I think the documentary 13th, I don't know, have you seen 13th on Netflix?
Haven't.
You should definitely watch it. It really expands on what you're doing here. And it's a really good watch. They do a great job of showing how the system, as soon as the slaves were freed in this country, how certain law, the 13th Amendment banned slavery, but in the print under that big line was, unless it's a punishment for a crime, right? So they started making crimes that the freed slaves were going to be committing, which is trespassing. They had nowhere to go. They were just freed, not given anywhere to live, not given anything to build a life with. So they're going to be walking on other people's property without permission, knocking on the door and maybe asking for shelter, or maybe asking, hey, can I get a job or something? That's boom, call the cops. That's trespassing. They're at my door, prison, right back into slavery.
Wow.
Vagrancy, homelessness was made illegal. These people were homeless. You let them free and they were homeless. These are my ancestors as well. You're homeless. It's illegal, prison, slavery, right back in. So if that's not systemic, by creating laws with a loophole, if that's not systemic, I don't know what is. The crime bill in 1994, mandatory minimums. Now the drug epidemic is a health issue. Back in the 90s, even the 70s, heroin has plagued the Black community since the 60s. And crack and cocaine. Yet these, it wasn't a health issue back then. It was a criminal issue. So that is systemic racism, when you don't start treating heroin addiction. And this is a strong statement. This might cause some uproar in your newspaper, but feel free to quote me, because I feel very strongly about this. Until the sons of white judges and white politicians started becoming addicted to heroin, it wasn't a health issue until then. So if that's not systemic racism, then I don't know what is. I mean, I have yet to find an argument that you know, can overcome the fact that all of a sudden we have found out that drugs are a health issue because they've started affected the upper echelons and the, you know, white people, basically the rich. It's it's spread and people are starting to realize, wow, this could be on my doorstep tomorrow. You know what I mean? Before it was just a black issue and just a ghetto issue and just a poor issue, but no, it's not like that anymore. So yeah, I think absolutely systemic racism exists, and that is how I justify my argument in my mind.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up in regards to police brutality. What can better prepare officers, or how can officers prevent this systemic racism while they're on duty or on the force? You kind of touched on it, but I just kind of...
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a double question. What can prevent it and how they can deal with it while on the force? So prevention, I think, comes with training and education. That takes funding, right? So that popular idea of defund the police, I know if you really look at defund the police, that's not what it means. But you know, defund the police, people are going to take that for what it is, right? I don't think that police need less funding. I think if anything, they need more. I do think that there needs to be social workers and you know, mental health specialists that are more involved in policing. So I think that will help prevent it. But education and training, the average, when I went to John Carroll, I knew a lot of kids, right? And I was, you know, I stuck out like a sore thumb, but I was able to become friends with people of all walks of life. I know a bunch of kids from the suburbs who wouldn't dare step into the neighborhood I grew up in ever in their life. I know a lot that became cops. And what neighborhoods are they policing? Neighborhoods that they are terrified of, neighborhoods that of people they don't understand. They don't even understand the dialect of English that some of these people speak. So I think during training, you have to be thrown into the communities that you are going to be policing. If you are not familiar with that community, familiar with the struggles and exposed to the problems and the underlying issues in those communities, you cannot effectively police that community. So if they want to prevent this, they have to, in the training, if this kid comes from Strongsville, Ohio, to become a Cleveland cop, he needs to spend weeks in the projects, weeks in the inner city to understand how to effectively police people. And a side effect of that would be he would get to know people. He would know people by first name. Hey, Chris, come here, man. You know you're supposed to be in school. Like, you know, it would just be so much more effective. And I think while you're on the force, to prevent that racism and to prevent these tragedies that are taking place, you have to get out of the good boys club. You know, the good boys club is, hey, that blue shield of silence, that brotherhood, or that you know, that club, that fraternity that police have, that, you know, they don't ask each other questions, they don't snitch on each other, all that has to be broken. You have to ask people questions. You have to question, if you have a partner who's making a weird decision, you have to question that. You know, it's your duty. It's hard to do. You may not make friends, you may lose friends, but that is what it takes to make real change. You have to sacrifice that fear you have of being an outcast and confront these people, because there are a lot of Black police officers. There are a lot of Latino police officers in Cleveland. There are a lot of different race police officers, all in ethnicities all over the country. But if you are not asking each other questions, and if you're not challenging each other and holding each other accountable, it's just like any sport. I played football at John Carroll. If my teammate was messing up and I didn't hold him accountable, what good am I as a teammate? You know, we're not going to win. We're not going to be successful. So you have to hold each other accountable within the police force. And that's just, you know, that's not the culture of it right now. The culture is us versus them, when it shouldn't be like that.
Thank you.
Okay, so another question that involves, you said previously about how education is so important in order to just have everyone come together and like improve the immigration system, so it's not always just us versus them, or constantly othering other racial groups. Let's be honest. And I was wondering if one of those solutions would involve just trying to reform or do something with the customs enforcement because of the controversy.
Absolutely. So a lot. It doesn't take much to become an immigration officer,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think it takes more to become a local police officer in terms of education and training than it does to become a ICE removal officer or a CBP agent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think education and training is very important there, but you have to. It's tough because it comes from the top down. You can only do what your superiors are letting you do. So I think it starts with us as voters to vote to get ourselves educated, to get the right superiors in there, and therefore those superiors can transfer the information and their whatever culture they want to instill in the customs and border patrol or immigration. Just like with Trump right now, I touched on it earlier. The culture
Mm-hmm.
of his presence, just from his campaign in 17, just a culture that he created during his campaign and him getting elected. He didn't have to make one executive order concerning immigration before you saw immigration officers change the way they started treating people. They were doing those big sweeps, if you remember at first.
Mm-hmm.
They're still, even during coronavirus, they're raiding people's house. Like that, just a culture created was like, all right, we got the green light. There's no boundaries now. There's no out of bounds now. There's no penalties. We're going for it.
Yes,
So
but
I think it's our job as voters, and then obviously, I think that these officers definitely need to be educated on the people they're dealing with. At the southern border, you need to be educated on what Mexicans, El Salvadorians, Hondurans, Guatemalans, what their challenges are, why they're fleeing their country. That way, when you have those interviews, because at the border they do a fear interview. If you come to the border claiming asylum, they do what's called a credible fear interview. If that officer needs to be educated on what these people are really, anybody can come and say my country's dangerous, but if the officer knows that, okay, I know that in Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala right now, there is a ton of two gangs called Los 18, which is the 18, and Las Zetas, and they call them disease, that are taking over and just imposing what's called a war tax on people. War tax is, hey, you have to give me, it's extortion. You have to give me this amount of money or we're going to chop your head off with a machete.
mm-hmm.
It's that violent. So if that officer comes, oh, la-di-da, I don't know anything about this country. Oh, you're not, Honduras is beautiful. I've seen pictures on Google, there's nothing to be scared of. Then, you're not going to be able to effectively help these people. And you're just going to, then you're going to turn them away and they're going to find another illegal way to get in.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's the reality of it. I'd rather take my chances being here and hiding than getting macheted in one of these countries. And that's the reality of it. And I speak from experience. I've had clients deported and family members contact me and say he's now dead because of that. Especially if you make it to the US and you go back, oh man, they think that you come back with your pockets are lined with gold.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very dangerous. And if the officer knows what he's sending them back to, then he might be more prudent in the process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, well,
I just have one more question for me. In the upcoming election, within the issue of police brutality, which candidate do you think has a better plan to eradicate or attempt to this problem?
I definitely think it's Joe Biden who has the better plan. Joe Biden will likely, follow that. He will re-examine policing. Um, the way I see Trump approaching this is, law and order, police are always right, always listen to police. When in reality, that's not the case. Mm-hmm. So I think there's obviously a problem, right? If you ignore a problem, I think it's just going to fester. If you ignore a wound on your body, a cut on your leg, if you ignore it, you don't clean it, you don't address it, it's going to fester. Same thing with the police issue in this country. I think you have to re-examine it, and I think Joe Biden is open to doing that. law and order is very important, right? But you have to, present law and order in the proper fashion and eliminate some of the culture, some of the systemic problems within law enforcement, which is, it's like I said in that video, I've said this for years, adversarial culture. No, not many police get into the police force and say, okay, if I'm gonna go help 5 ladies cross the street today, I'm gonna go help 5 old people that fallen out of bed today. Not many officers say that. Most officers say, okay, how many tickets do I need to write to get a good performance review? How many arrests do I need to make? How many guns can I get off the street? How many, if you go in with that adversarial cops and robbers, that cowboy mentality, then that you're dangerous from the beginning. So I think that's kind of the culture that Trump instills. Very inflammatory, very negative, a lot of fear, a lot of hate. And I think the vibe that Joe Biden puts off is a lot more, let's approach the situation with care. Let's get police more resources so they don't have to be mental health professionals. They don't have to be, hostage negotiators. They don't have to be all this. They can focus on what they need to focus on because they're overburdened. Police are overburdened, and most police are good people. I know police officers, and I have friends who are police officers, but I have no doubt in my mind that when that uniform is on and that badge is on, you think, at least as an officer, you have to act a certain way, and you have to operate within that certain culture. And that's a huge problem. So Biden, absolutely. I think Biden would be the solution, or not solution, but at least approach it. And I at least acknowledge there's a problem there,
Thank you.
So as to clarify with the customs enforcement, those amendments should also be done for that system, since the police and the customs enforcement are similar, as they're trying to control, I guess would be a good word, control a group of people, but they're doing it in like a really aggressive or black and white manner.
Right. Yeah. So for Customs and Border Patrol, I think that's definitely, when they have a candidate up there that's kind of saying, hey, these are people, they're not, that rhetoric that these people coming across the southern border are all criminals and rapists and things like that. I mean, I just invite people who think that. I mean, I want people to come with me to immigration court and just look and come with me to, Brooklyn Heights, where the removal office is, and just see the people that are there. These aren't a bunch of people with like tattoos on their face, gang member, criminal rate. None of them. They're with their family. They have children. The children are there. I mean, it is some of the most heartbreaking work is immigration work, because you go to immigration court and it's packed to the brim with people who are just in such despair, and they're just such normal everyday families that I've never seen some hardened looking criminal in the immigration office or court. Those people don't bother going there. Like, those people aren't, these people who are fighting their cases and in immigration court and coming across, these are real families that are really scared, that want a future for their children. They want, they're not criminals and rapists and serial killer and all. It's just like, this is not the reality of it. I live it every day. So when I hear that, it's just so deflating, because I don't know if that culture trickles down to CBP, the Customs and Border Patrol, but I know for a fact some of the removal officers are, they feel that way. They feel like, oh, these people are all bad, they just need to go back. Not the reality of it. It's not.
Thank you.
I have no further questions. If Rita, do you have any if you want to address?
No further questions from me either.
Okay.
All right. Well, if you guys if you guys need to follow up on anything, any more questions, just feel free to email me. I gave Dr. B my cell phone as well, and you know, all my contact info. So if you need to just text me real quick, whatever, just consider us connected. All right. So if you ever need anything, just reach out. You know, she has all my personal information. So you know, if you guys ever plan on going to law school or have any questions, just anything, just consider us connected. I dedicate a large part of my time to going back and helping students and things like that because I wouldn't have made it where I was if I didn't have some sort of help or some connection or you know that networking is huge. So just consider us connected. Don't hesitate to reach out. Okay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much,
You're
and
welcome.
thank you for the accommodations this week. It was hectic, but thank you for understanding.
No problem at all. My pleasure. My pleasure. All right. So again, follow up if you need to. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yeah. No problem. Tell Dr. B I said hello.
We will. Have a good one.
Too. Bye.